Success doesn't come to people who wait. Wealth doesn't land in your lap by chance. Every day, countless people dream about money, freedom, and the life they want, but most of them never get it. Why? Because they think the right moment will come, because they rely on luck, because they follow the wrong habits and the wrong mindset. If you want to be wealthy, if you want to create freedom for yourself and your family, you have to understand that it all starts with how you think. The thoughts you allow, the decisions you make, and the actions you take today are the building blocks of your future. Now, this video will reveal the 10 ways your thinking is keeping you broke. These are the habits, beliefs, and mindsets that silently destroy opportunities and limit your potential. If you've been struggling, feeling stuck, or wondering why your efforts aren't paying off, it's time to look deeper, not at the economy, not at your boss, not at your circumstances, but at your thinking. The way you approach money, risk, growth, and action determines whether you stay average or rise to extraordinary success. By the end of this video, you'll see clearly what's been holding you back. You'll understand why waiting, fearing, blaming, or living only for today keeps you from achieving the life you deserve. And most importantly, you'll discover how to start thinking like a person who builds wealth, creates value, and takes control of their destiny. This is about mindset. This is about action. This is about taking responsibility for the life you want. And starting right now, Yala number E, waiting for luck instead of taking action. Many people spend their entire lives waiting for something to happen, a lucky break, a perfect opportunity, or some miracle that will suddenly change everything. They dream about wealth and success, but they convince themselves that it will only arrive when the stars align. They wait. They hope, they imagine a day when fortune will simply knock on their door. And while they're waiting, life is passing them by. The truth is, luck rarely knocks. Wealth rarely arrives uninvited. Action is what creates opportunity, and waiting for luck is one of the fastest ways to remain stagnant. It's easy to tell yourself that you're just waiting for the right moment. Soon, you say, things will fall into place. But here's the reality. The right moment rarely comes on its own. People who achieve wealth don't wait for luck. They create it. They work, they plan, they try, they fail, they adjust, and they keep moving forward. Action brings results. Luke might give a small boost once in a while, but it is consistent effort and deliberate choices that build lasting success. If you wait for luck, you're leaving your life in the hands of chance. And chance is unreliable. Waiting for luck also robs you of time. Every day you spend hoping instead of acting is a day lost. Those who become wealthy understand that time is one of the most valuable resources. It cannot be bought, replaced, or recovered. The moment you spend waiting, someone else is taking action, learning skills, building connections, and creating opportunities. By the time luck might appear, you're already ahead and you're still standing in place. Waiting creates a false sense of control. You think if you just hold on, something will happen, but life doesn't work that way. Life rewards action, not waiting. Many people rationalize waiting by saying they need more knowledge, more preparation, or more experience before they start. While preparation is important, over-preparation becomes procrastination. There is never a perfect moment. You can never know enough to guarantee that every move will succeed. Action requires stepping into the unknown, making decisions despite uncertainty, and learning as you go. Every mistake becomes a lesson. Every small step builds momentum, and every choice brings you closer to creating your own luck. Waiting for luck is also a way to avoid responsibility. It's much easier to blame circumstances, to hope that some external force will save you, than to take ownership of your life and start acting. But relying on luck means giving away your power. You are letting something outside yourself determine your future. Action puts the power back in your hands. It makes you the architect of your own success. It turns hope into results and dreams into reality. Consider the people who achieved extraordinary wealth and success. Almost none of them were simply lucky. Most started with very little, faced obstacles, and failed many times before they succeeded. What set them apart was not that they stumbled into fortune, it was that they refused to wait. They kept taking steps, learning, adjusting, and moving forward, even when the outcome was uncertain. Their luck was the result of consistent action, persistence, and determination. Waiting for luck never got them anywhere. It was their efforts that created opportunities others might have mistaken for luck. Waiting also breeds fear. The longer you wait, the more time you have to imagine failure, to question your abilities, and to convince yourself that you can't succeed. Fear grows in the absence of action. Action shrinks fear because it teaches you what works and what doesn't. When you start moving, even in small ways, momentum builds. Each decision you make, each step forward, creates evidence that you can succeed. And once you see that evidence, confidence grows and the need to wait disappears. If you want to become wealthy, understand that action and persistence are far more reliable than luck. Build a plan, even a small one, and start executing it. Seek knowledge, yes, but don't let the pursuit of knowledge replace the pursuit of results. Every phone call you make, every skill you develop, every project you complete is creating your own luck. Opportunity favors those who show up, who work, who persist, and who refuse to remain idle. Waiting is passive. Action is active, and wealth belongs to the active. The people who wait for luck will always have excuses. I'll start tomorrow, they say. I'll wait until conditions are better. But the truth is, conditions are never perfect. The world is full of challenges, setbacks, and uncertainty. Those who succeed act despite the challenges. They act despite the setbacks. They act in imperfect conditions, learning, adjusting, and pushing forward every day. That's how progress is made. That's how wealth is built. That's how you take control of your life instead of leaving it in the hands of chance. Your life and your wealth are created by your choices, not by chance. Waiting for luck is surrendering your future to something uncertain. Taking action, even imperfect action, is claiming your future and creating the circumstances for success. The first step doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to happen. Start moving, start building, start learning, start growing, and slowly but surely your actions will compound into results that even luck cannot explain. The moment you stop waiting and start acting, everything changes. Opportunities appear where none seem to exist. Doors open that were invisible before, confidence grows, skills expand, and results start to flow. Luck is not the cause of success. It's the byproduct of consistent action. And if you want to be wealthy, you have to create the conditions for your own luck every single day. Stop waiting, start doing, and watch how your life transforms when you decide to be the force that shapes your own future. Number R, believing hard work alone will make you rich. Most people grow up hearing the idea that if you work hard enough, everything will take care of itself. Wake up early, stay late, keep grinding, and success will eventually find you. It sounds convincing because hard work is easy to measure. You can see someone putting in the hours. You can see the sweat on their forehead, the tired eyes. After a long day and the routine of repeating the same thing day after day. But the truth is, hard work alone does not guarantee wealth. You can work 12 hours a day and still end up broke. You can work yourself to exhaustion and still have very little to show for it if you're not working in the right direction. Think about it this way. There are men and women who have been working hard their entire lives, yet they still struggle to pay the bills. They show up on time, they never complain, they follow the rules, but they don't build wealth. Why? Because the world does not reward effort alone. It rewards results, it rewards value. Hard work is part of the equation, but it's not the whole equation. You need direction. You need a strategy. You need skills that make your time worth more. Working hard at the wrong thing is like running fast in the wrong direction. The harder you work, the further you end up from where you want to be. That's why so many people wake up one day and realize that years have passed, hasn't improved. They think their time should have earned them more by now. But time plus effort without growth doesn't equal wealth. It equals exhaustion. If you want to change your financial situation, you need to understand that wealth is built on leverage. It's built on multiplying the value of your time and your decisions. The person who works hard digging ditches may earn an honest living, but the one who figures out how to manage a team of workers or how to build machines that make digging faster is the one who gets ahead. Both are working, but one is working in a way that multiplies results. The trap many fall into is believing that if they just double their effort, they will double their reward. It doesn't work like that. If the system you're in only pays you a small amount for your time, then doubling the hours doesn't create wealth, it just creates burnout. Wealth begins when you start thinking differently. Instead of asking, how can I work harder? You ask, how can I work smarter? Instead of asking, how can I do more? You ask, how can I create more value in less time? That shift in thinking separates those who stay stuck from those who rise. There's also another trap, pride and struggle. Some people attach their identity to how hard they work. They say, nobody works harder than me, as if that alone is proof that they deserve wealth. But wealth doesn't respond to effort, it responds to value. You could be working 3 jobs and still be financially stuck because none of those jobs allow you to build assets or skills that multiply. Working hard for survival is not the same as working smart for growth. Think about the entrepreneurs who built businesses from scratch. Of course, they worked hard, but they also made decisions that multiplied their effort. They invested in themselves, learned new skills, developed systems, and built networks. They didn't just work long hours, they worked on the right things. They made choices that positioned them for growth. That's the key difference. If you want to break free from the cycle of working hard without results, you need to start seeing your time as the most valuable resource you have. Every hour should be measured not just by effort, but by return. If an hour of your time brings very little, you have to find a way to increase the value of that hour. You do that through learning, through building better skills, through positioning yourself in places where your work brings greater rewards. Wealth is not built by accident. It's built intentionally. Hard work can carry you forward, but only if it's guided by vision. Without vision, effort scatters. With vision, effort comes. That's why some people seem to get so much further in less time. They're not just working hard. They're working with purpose, with clarity, and with strategies that multiply results. But if you continue to believe that hard work alone will make you rich, you'll miss the truth. You'll stay stuck in the grind, hoping your hours will eventually pay off. But if you decide to shift your thinking and start working not just harder, but smarter, you'll open the door to a different life. Wealth comes to those who understand the power of combining effort with knowledge, direction, and value creation. And when you embrace that truth, you'll never look at work the same way again. Number 7, fearing risk and playing too safe. There are countless people who never reach wealth because they live their lives trying to avoid every form of risk. They believe if they stay careful, keep everything predictable, and never take a chance, they will somehow protect themselves. And while it's true that avoiding risk can prevent you from losing, it also prevents you from winning. Playing safe keeps you stuck in the same circle, doing the same routine, seeing the same results, never breaking past survival. The truth is, wealth doesn't come to those who stay in their comfort zone. It comes to those who take calculated steps forward, even when it feels uncertain. Fear of risk often comes from the way many were raised. You might have been told to get a steady job, keep your head down, don't rock the boat, just play it safe, and everything will be fine. But look around. Millions of people followed that advice and are still struggling financially. Safety isn't safety if it leaves you broke at retirement. Safety isn't safety if it keeps you dependent on a paycheck. that disappears when the company decides to let you go. The so-called safe path often turns out to be the riskiest path of all because it robs you of growth and freedom. You can work for 40 years, always staying on the safe side, and end up with nothing more than bills and regrets. Not because you didn't work hard, but because you never risked stepping beyond the routine. Every opportunity has some risk attached to it. Starting a business carries risk. Investing carries risk. Even speaking up for a raise at work carries risk. But without stepping into those moments of uncertainty, you stay trapped in mediocrity. The wealth you want is always on the other side of that fear. Now, risk doesn't mean recklessness. It doesn't mean jumping into things blindly or gambling your future on chance. It means weighing the possibilities, doing your homework, and then having the courage to move forward, even though there are no guarantees. Every successful person has faced risk. They stepped into situations where the outcome was not certain. They risked rejection, failure, and loss, but that's exactly why they grew. Each risk carried lessons. Each risk opened doors. Each risk brought them closer to freedom. People who fear risk often end up being controlled by those who don't. If you won't take the risk of starting something new, you'll work for someone who did. If you won't take the risk of investing, you'll watch others grow their money while you save. Yours in a bank that gives you almost nothing in return. If you won't take the risk of standing out, you'll blend into the crowd and never be noticed. Playing too safe puts you at the mercy of those who dared. Think about how life itself is filled with risks. You cross the street, there's risk. You drive a car, there's risk. You get married, there's risk. Even breathing carries risk. Yet, we don't let that stop us from living. But when it comes to finances, people freeze. They imagine the worst possible outcome and convince themselves that doing nothing is better. What they don't see is that doing nothing is also a decision, and it has consequences. Waiting, avoiding, hiding, it all leads to missed chances. The most dangerous thing you can do is cling to safety while life passes you by. And wealth is created when you embrace the unknown with preparation, when you realize that yes, you might lose, but you might also gain more than you ever imagined. And even if you do fail, the lessons you pick up along the way make you sharper, wiser, and stronger for the next attempt. Failure isn't final unless you quit. Risk only becomes dangerous if you refuse to learn from it, right? The truth is, the people you admire today, the ones living with freedom, they weren't born lucky. They weren't given a guarantee. They just decided that staying safe wasn't enough. They took a leap. They made moves while others hesitated. They were willing to be uncomfortable in the short term so they could enjoy the rewards in the long term. Playing too safe would have kept them average forever. But risk gave them the possibility of greatness. All right? So if you want to be rich, you can't live afraid of risk. You can't keep waiting for a life where everything is certain, because that life doesn't exist. Nothing is certain. The only real certainty is that if you never take risks, you'll never grow. Wealth comes to those who are bold enough to face risk with wisdom, who step into opportunities with preparation, and who keep moving even when it feels uncertain. Playing it safe might feel comfortable today, but years from now you'll realize comfort cost you everything. Number 4, spending more than you earned. One of the biggest reasons people never reach wealth is because they spend faster than money comes in. It doesn't matter how much you make. If more is going out than coming in, you'll always be stuck. Some people think earning more will solve the problem, but that's not true if the habit of overspending remains. I've seen people double their income and still end up broke because the moment the money increased, so did their spending. They bought a bigger car, moved into a bigger house, added more bills, and before long, their expenses swallowed their income again. Wealth isn't built by how much you earn. It's built by how much you keep and how wisely you use it. The problem with overspending is that it feels good. In the short term, you buy something new, and for a moment it feels like progress. A new phone, a new pair of shoes, expensive dinner. It gives you a quick sense of satisfaction, but that satisfaction fades quickly, and what you're left with is a lighter wallet and more pressure. That cycle of temporary pleasure keeps millions of people trapped, always chasing the next purchase, always believing they deserve it, while their future keeps getting smaller. Think about how dangerous it is when your spending habits outpace your income. It puts you in a position where debt becomes normal. Credit cards, loans, payments stacked on top of payments, this becomes a lifestyle. And when debt becomes a lifestyle, freedom disappears. You're no longer working for yourself, you're working for lenders. Every hour you put in is already spent before you even earn it. That's why so many people feel like they're running in circles. They work, they pay, they owe, they repeat. The discipline of living below your means may not sound exciting, but it's the foundation of wealth. If you can't control $1, you won't control 1,000. If you can't manage 1,000, you won't manage 10,000. The habit of discipline starts small, with everyday decisions. Do you spend on what you don't need just because it feels good in the moment? Or do you put that money aside to work for you later? Every choice matters, because every dollar is either serving your future or stealing from it. Some people confuse wealth with looking rich. They think driving the newest car or wearing the most expensive brand means they've made it. But wealth is not what you show, it's what you grow. A person can look rich and still be drowning in debt, while another can look modest and be financially free. Chasing the image of wealth keeps you broke, while quietly building real wealth makes you truly free. That's why you need to stop asking, what will people think if I don't have this? And start asking, what will my future look like if I keep spending like this? It's also important to understand that overspending is often tied to emotions. Some people spend to escape stress. Some spend to impress others. Some spend because they believe money is meant to be enjoyed right now, no matter the cost tomorrow. But if you don't break that cycle, tomorrow never improves. Learning to delay gratification, to say no today, so you can say yes tomorrow, is one of the most powerful decisions you can make. Think of money like seeds. If you eat all the seeds today, you'll have nothing left to plant for the future. But if you save some, invest them, and let them grow, one seed becomes many. That's how wealth is built, not by consuming everything, but by reserving enough to multiply. If you always spend everything you earn, you'll always live at the level of survival. If you discipline yourself to spend less, you create room for savings and investments, which eventually lead to freedom. You don't need to live a miserable life to build wealth. It's not about cutting every joy or never spending on anything you enjoy. It's about balance and control. It's about making sure your spending matches your goals. Every purchase should be measured by whether it takes you closer to freedom or pushes you further into chains. When you start thinking that way, your decisions change. Suddenly, that expensive dinner doesn't feel worth it when you know it could be another step toward financial independence. Overspending also steals your peace of mind. Living paycheck to paycheck creates constant stress. You lie awake at night, wondering how to cover the next bill. You feel trapped by your own habits, stuck in a cycle you can't escape. But the moment you take control, the moment you decide to spend less than you earn, that stress begins to fade. You create breathing room, you create options, and options are what led to freedom. If you want to build wealth, the rule is simple: spend less than you earn and use the difference wisely. That gap between income and spending is your ticket to freedom. It's where savings come from. It's where investments come from. It's where your future grows. If there is no gap, there is no growth. And if you don't control your spending will control you. No, you can't get rich if your money disappears as fast as it arrives. Real wealth is not built on income alone. It's built on discipline. It's built on controlling your desires today so you can secure your freedom tomorrow. If you master that discipline, you'll already be ahead of most people, because while they're busy trying to look rich, you'll be busy becoming rich. Number woo, thinking education ends after school, One of the greatest traps keeping people from building wealth is believing that education ends the day you graduate. Many people think once they finish school, collect their diploma, and land a job, the learning phase is over. They close the books, put away the notes, and enter the working world convinced that what they know is enough to carry them through life. But the truth is, school is just the beginning. Real education, the kind that shapes your future and determines your financial destiny, starts when you step out into the world and choose to keep learning. Look around and you'll see so many people stuck in the same position year after year, not because they're not capable, but because they stopped growing. They stopped reading. They stopped asking questions. They stopped seeking out new skills. They believed the piece of paper they earned years ago was enough to guarantee success. It's never updated their knowledge. Meanwhile, the world keeps changing. Technology moves forward. Industries shift. New opportunities appear. If you don't keep up, you get left behind. Education is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong process. So, the people who achieve wealth are those who never stop being students. They read, they listen, they study, they ask questions, they attend seminars, they learn from mentors. And they're always looking for new ways to grow. They understand that their mind is their greatest asset, and the more they invest in it, the more valuable they become. You can lose money, you can lose a job, you can lose almost anything. But if you've built your knowledge and skills, you can rebuild your wealth again and again. That's the power of lifelong. Many people work hard every day, but don't take even an hour a week to grow their mind. They sit in traffic, watch television, scroll through their phone, but rarely spend time developing new skills. They wonder why nothing changes, why their income stays the same, why opportunities never come. The answer is simple. If you stop learning, you stop growing. And if you stop growing, you limit your chances of wealth. Education doesn't just mean formal schooling. It means self-education. It means being curious, open, and willing to stretch yourself beyond your comfort zone. It means reading books that challenge your thinking. It means listening to people who have already achieved what you want to achieve. It means practicing skills that make you more valuable in the marketplace. Every time you add new knowledge, you increase the worth of your time. And when your time becomes more valuable, your income and opportunities increase. Think about how the world rewards specialized knowledge. General knowledge is everywhere, but specialized knowledge is what sets you apart. Anyone can work hard, but not everyone can solve problems, create solutions, or bring unique ideas. That comes from constant learning. If you believe education ended when you walked out of school, you cut yourself off from that growth. You lock yourself into the same level, while others who keep learning move ahead. Now, some people resist learning because they say they're too busy. They're caught up in work, family, or responsibilities. But if you want a different life, you have to make time. Even 30 minutes a day of focused learning can change your direction over time. You can listen to an audiobook while driving, read a few pages before bed, or take an online course instead of wasting hours on distractions. Small, consistent efforts compound into massive growth. There's also a dangerous mindset that says, I already know enough. That belief shuts the door to practice. The moment you think you know it all, you stop listening, and you miss the lessons life is trying to teach you. The most successful people are also the most humble learners. They know there's always more to discover, always another level to reach. Their hunger to grow keeps them moving forward, while others stay stuck in the past. Wealth is not about luck or chance. It's about preparation meeting opportunity. And preparation comes from education. If you're constantly learning, you're prepared when opportunities arrive. If you're not, opportunities will pass you by because you won't have the skills or awareness to take advantage of them. Education keeps you ready. It sharpens your mind. It gives you the tools to recognize and seize the moment when it comes. If you want to become wealthy, make learning a daily part of your life. Read books that teach you about money, success, leadership, and human behavior. Study people who have achieved the kind of life you want. Surround yourself with conversations that stretch your thinking. Challenge your old beliefs and replace them with stronger ones. The world is full of free and paid knowledge, more available today than at any other time in history. The only question is whether you'll use it. You can't get rich if you think education ended with your diploma. That mindset locks you into stagnation, and stagnation never leads to wealth. If you decide that your education continues for the rest of your life, you open the door to unlimited growth. The more you learn, the more you earn, not just in money, but in wisdom, confidence, and freedom. When you commit to lifelong education, you put yourself in the driver's seat of your own future. Number lick, chasing quick money instead of building value. One of the most common mistakes people make on the road to wealth is chasing quick money. The promise of fast cash pulls people in like a magnet. They see shortcuts, schemes, get-rich-quick programs, and promises of overnight success. And they jump in because it feels easier than building something real. The problem is that chasing quick money almost always ends in disappointment. Even if you make some cash here and there, it slips away just as fast because there's no foundation beneath it. Real wealth isn't about speed, it's about creating value that lasts. People are often drawn to quick money because they're tired of waiting. They look at their bills, their struggles, their current situation, and they want an escape. They want something fast that can take away the pressure. That desire makes them vulnerable. They're willing to gamble on anything that sounds promising. But the same impatience that pushes them toward fast money keeps them broke. They never build stability. They never create long-term security. They just jump from one opportunity to the next, always chasing, never arriving. Think about how many scams exist because of this mindset. There are people promising instant riches with no effort. There are schemes that tell you all you need is one secret or one trick. And every year, millions fall for them. Why? Because they're desperate for quick money. But the reality is simple. If it sounds too easy, it probably is. Anything worth having takes effort, consistency, and patience. If you want lasting wealth, you can't keep chasing shortcuts. Wealth grows when you shift your focus from money to value. Instead of asking, how can I make money fast? Start asking, how can I create something valuable enough that people are willing to pay me for it again and again? That's the question that leads to real success. Quick money is often a one-time hit. Value is something that multiplies over time. The more people you serve, the more problems you solve, the more valuable you become, the more money flows to you. That's how true wealth is built. Chasing quick money is also dangerous because it keeps you distracted. While you're busy running after one scheme, you're not building skills. While you're waiting for some miracle to work out, you're not improving yourself. Years pass, and instead of creating something solid, you have nothing but failed attempts and wasted time. And wasted time is something you can never get back. When you look at people who've built lasting wealth, you'll notice they spent years creating value. They built businesses, developed skills, invested in assets, and focused on serving people. None of them became wealthy overnight. Even if their success looks sudden from the outside, what you don't see are the years of consistent effort behind the scenes. They weren't chasing fast cash, they were building foundations. And because of that, their wealth lasted. Quick money also creates bad habits. If you somehow stumble into fast money, you don't learn discipline. You don't learn patience. You don't learn how to manage and grow it. So the money disappears just as quickly as it came. That's why you hear so many stories of lottery winners who lose it all. The money came faster than their skills, faster than their maturity, faster than their discipline. Without those qualities, even millions can vanish. Wealth requires the character to manage it. And that character is built over time, not overnight. Building value, on the other hand, develops everything you need for lasting wealth. It forces you to grow. It pushes you to become disciplined. It teaches you how to solve problems and deal with challenges. It makes you more valuable to others. And when you're valuable, money naturally follows. It may not happen instantly, but when it does, it lasts because it's built on a foundation you created through your own growth. The temptation of quick money will always be there. You'll always hear about someone who made a fortune overnight, and you'll always feel the pull to jump in. But don't fall for it. Look deeper. Ask yourself what you're really building. Ask yourself whether what you're chasing will still be there 5 years from now, or if it will disappear as fast as it arrived. The answer will tell you if you're on the right path. Wealth is not about chasing. It's about planting. It's about creating something real, nurturing it, and allowing it to grow. If you focus on building value, the money will follow. It may not come as fast as you'd like, but it will come stronger. It will last longer, and it will give you the freedom quick money never can. You can't get rich chasing fast rewards. You get rich by building value that compounds over time. You get rich by creating something people need, by becoming someone people trust, and by staying consistent when others give up. Quick money fades. Value endures. And when you commit to value, you're no longer just earning. You're building a legacy. Number chi, blaming circumstances instead of adapting. There are so many people who spend their entire lives pointing the fingers at everything around them for why they aren't wealthy. They blame the government, the economy, their family background, their boss, their city, even their friends. They believe their circumstances are the reason they can't move forward. And while it's true that some circumstances are harder than others, the truth is blaming them never changes anything. Blaming only keeps you stuck, while adapting moves you forward. The world is full of stories of people who started with almost nothing and built a life of abundance. They didn't have the perfect conditions. They didn't wait until everything lined up before making a move. They simply decided not to let their circumstances define their future. They adapted, adjusted, and found a way forward even when things weren't in their favor. That's the mindset difference. Two people can face the same problem. One blames it and stays stuck. The other adapts and grows stronger. Blaming circumstances may feel comforting because it removes responsibility. If you can say it's the economy's fault, or your boss's fault, or the system's fault, then you don't have to face the uncomfortable truth that you're responsible for your choices. But the price of that comfort is heavy because it robs you of your power. The moment you decide it's someone else's fault, you've given away your ability to change. Adaptation, on the other hand, takes that power back. It says, things are not perfect, but I can adjust, I can grow, I can find another way. That's where progress begins. Think about how life constantly changes. Jobs disappear. Industries evolve. Technology moves forward. Opportunities shift. The people who thrive are not the ones who sit around complaining about how things used to be. They're the ones who adapt to how things are now. They learn new skills. They move where opportunities are. They try new approaches. They refuse to stay frozen while the world keeps moving. That willingness to adapt is what separates those who build wealth from those who remain stuck. Blaming circumstances also blinds you to solutions. When your focus is on what's wrong, you stop looking for what's possible. If you believe you can't succeed because you weren't born rich, you won't notice the opportunities available to you. If you believe you can't move forward because of the economy, you won't see the people still thriving despite it. Your focus creates your reality. When you focus on blame, you see obstacles. When you focus on adapting, you see options. Some people say, you don't understand my situation. It's different. And yes, every situation is unique. Some are harder, no doubt about it. But history shows that people from the toughest situations often rise the highest. Not because it was easy, but because they decided not to settle. They learned to adapt, and in adapting, they became stronger than those who had it easier. Circumstances test you, but they don't have to trap you. The key is how you respond. Adaptation is a skill you can build. It starts by asking better questions. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what can I do about it? Instead of saying the economy is bad, ask, what new skills do people need right now that I can learn? Instead of saying, my job doesn't pay enough, ask, how can I create another source of income? Questions shift your perspective. They push you from blame to solutions, from helplessness to action. Wealth never comes to people who spend their energy blaming. Wealth comes to people who spend their energy creating, adapting, and learning. When you stop blaming, you free up mental space to think clearly. You begin to see opportunities where before you only saw problems. You stop waiting for the world to change and start changing yourself. That's when momentum begins. There will always be things outside your control. The economy, politics, the weather, global events, none of us can control those. But you can control your response. You can control your habits, your learning, your choices, and your actions. And those are the things that ultimately shape your future. People who adapt succeed not because life is easier for them, but because they spend more time on what they can control and less time blaming what they can't. Blaming circumstances is like putting your future on hold until the world becomes perfect. But the world will never be perfect. There will always be challenges, always be setbacks, always be uncertainty. If you wait for conditions to be ideal, you'll wait forever. Adapting means moving forward despite the conditions. It means building wealth in the middle of uncertainty, just like countless people have done before you. The moment you stop blaming and start adapting, everything shifts. You reclaim your power. You begin to act differently. You no longer say, I can't. Because of this, you start saying, I will find a way anyway. And that attitude attracts opportunities. It changes how people see you. It changes how you see yourself. Suddenly, instead of being a victim of circumstances, you become a creator of your future. You can't get rich if your habit is blaming, but you can build wealth if your habit is adapting. The world will keep changing, challenges will keep coming. But if you commit to growth and flexibility, nothing can hold you down for long. Your future is not determined by your circumstances. It's determined by how you respond to them. And if you choose adaptation over blame, you choose a future where wealth and freedom are possible. Avoiding investments and relying only on salary. Most people work their entire lives depending on only one stream of income, their salary. And that's why they never become rich. A salary can make you comfortable, but it rarely makes you wealthy. A salary pays the bills, but it doesn't buy freedom. A salary takes care of today, but it doesn't secure tomorrow. You see, there's nothing wrong with having a job. In fact, a job is where most of us start. But if you stop at your salary, if you depend on nothing else, then you're building your financial life on one leg of the table. And sooner or later, one leg won't hold you. The truth is, every salary has a ceiling. No matter how high it goes, someone else decides it. But someone else decides how much your time is worth, how much your skills are worth, how much your effort is worth. You can be the hardest worker in the room, but at the end of the month, your paycheck is still written by someone else. And if they decide to cut costs, or if the economy changes, or if your role is no longer needed, check can disappear overnight. If your entire life depends on it, then your entire life can crumble overnight. That's a dangerous way to live. Wealthy people know something different. They know that no matter how good a salary is, it's only a tool to build something bigger. They take a portion of it and put it to work. They invest. They create streams of income that don't require them to trade hours for dollars. Because here's the reality. Your time is limited, but money, if invested wisely, can grow without limits. If you put your money to work, it will earn while you sleep, while you eat, while you take a vacation. even while you do nothing. That's the beauty of investments. It frees you from the trap of always trading your life for money. But the person who avoids investing, who says, I'll just rely on my paycheck, is stuck in the same cycle forever. You work, you get paid, you spend, then you start all over again. That's not wealth. That's survival. And survival will never make you rich. If you keep repeating that cycle for 30 years, you'll wake up at retirement age and realize that all you ever did was work to cover expenses. You never built anything that lasts. Some people avoid investments because they're afraid. They say, what if I lose? But let me ask you this. What if you never try? What if you spend your whole life working and never build something that grows on its own? That's the bigger loss. Fear of risk keeps many people poor. The wealthy know that there is no reward without risk. But they also know that risk can be managed with education, planning, and patience. Don't avoid investments because of fear. Avoid ignorance, avoid impatience, avoid gambling your money on things you don't understand. But don't avoid the principle of investing itself, because that's the very thing that separates the wealthy from the average. Let's be real, you can't save your way to wealth on a salary alone. Inflation will eat your savings. Taxes will take a portion. Emergencies will chip away. If you're not putting that money into something that grows, then over time, your money is shrinking. It's losing value every year, even if you're holding on to it. But when you invest, whether it's in stocks, real estate, businesses, or even in your own skills that increase your value, you give your money the chance to multiply. And multiplication, not addition, is the language of wealth. Think about it. If you earn a salary of 100 ling month and save Y bet, at the end of the year, you've got log dollars, ling. But if you invest that same wu bat every month into something that grows by even a modest byte by under year, over years, that amount compounds into hundreds of thousands. That's the difference between living paycheck to paycheck and living with freedom. The person who avoids investing never gets to experience that power. Another thing you must understand, depending only on a salary, keeps you in a position where you're always asking, can I afford it? But when you invest, your money begins to work for you. And over time, you shift that question to, how much is my money earning? That's a completely different mindset. The wealthy don't rely on one stream. They build many: salary, investments, businesses, assets. Each one adds to the flow. And with multiple streams, even if one dries up, the others keep you afloat. That's stability. That's security. That's wealth. No, but let me tell you the harsh truth. Many people avoid investing not because they don't have the money, but because they don't have the discipline. They want to spend today instead of preparing for tomorrow. They think investing is something they'll do later, after they bought the things they want, but later never comes, and that's why they stay broke. It's not that they didn't earn money, it's that they never used their money to earn for them. If you want to break out of this trap, start small, but start now. Don't wait for the perfect amount or the perfect opportunity. There is no perfect time. The best time to plant a tree was Earth years ago, and the second best time is today. If all you can invest is war, invest it. Learn the habit, build the muscle. As your income grows, your investments grow with it. Over time, the results will shock you. But if you keep saying, I'll just depend on my salary, then Ursa's years from now, you'll still be working, still relying on the same paycheck, and still wondering why wealth hasn't found you. So let me remind you, a salary is not bad. It's just incomplete. It's a foundation, but it's not the whole house. The wealthy build on that foundation with investments, with multiple streams, with assets that grow. If you want wealth, stop thinking like an employee who only waits for payday. Start thinking like an investor who uses every payday as an opportunity to build something bigger. Don't avoid investments. Avoid regret. Don't avoid learning how money works. Avoid living your entire life depending on someone else to pay you. Your salary can feed you today, but your investments will feed you for life. Number Joe, surrounding yourself with negative or broke mindsets. If you really want to know one of the fastest ways to stay broke for life, it's this. Surround yourself with negative people, people who complain every day, people who have no vision, and people who have already convinced themselves that wealth and success are impossible. If you allow your environment to be filled with nothing but scarcity thinking, don't be surprised when your life reflects it. Because here's the truth. Your income, your mindset, your habits, they are all deeply influenced by the people you spend the most time with. You don't have to be a genius to figure this out. Just look at your circle. Are they always broke? Always blaming others? Always making excuses? If they are, and if that's who you're listening to every day, then what chance do you have of thinking differently? You won't. You'll start believing the same lies they believe, that the system is rigged, that nothing can change, that the rich are just lucky, and that life is unfair. And once you buy into that mindset, you've already lost the battle. See, money follows energy, and energy is contagious. Spend time around winners, and you'll start thinking like a winner. Spend time around losers, and you'll start talking and acting like a loser. It's not complicated, it's human psychology. If everyone around you spends their evenings complaining about the boss, complaining about the government, complaining about how life is stacked against them, you'll soon be doing the same. And guess what? Complaining never produced a single dollar. Complaining never created a business. Complaining never built wealth. It only wastes time and energy. The people you spend time with are like mirrors. They reflect back to you who you are and who you are becoming. That's why successful people guard their environment carefully. They know that even one negative, toxic, broke-minded person in their circle can pull them down faster than they realize. You think you're strong enough to resist it, but spend enough time with them and you'll catch yourself saying their words, believing their beliefs, and living their reality. That's why Jim Rohn said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But if 4 of your closest friends are broke, negative, and lazy, you can guess who the 5th one is. Now, I'm not telling you to cut off every person who isn't rich. This isn't about looking down on people. It's about protecting your mind. Because mindset is the foundation of money. If you want to become wealthy, you have to spend time around people who believe it's possible, who encourage growth, who push you to do better, who hold you accountable. You need to be around people who talk about opportunities, not just problems. People who read books, not just watch endless television. People who want to build the future, not just complain about the past. Here's the test. After spending time with someone, do you feel more motivated, more clear, more hungry to succeed? Or do you feel drained, hopeless, and discouraged? That's your answer. If your circle doesn't inspire you, it's not a circle, it's a cage. And if you stay in that cage long enough, it will lock your potential away forever. Wealth doesn't grow in a negative environment. Just like plants can't grow without sunlight, you can't grow without positive, forward-thinking energy around you. You need mentors, you need friends who push you higher, you need role models who are ahead of you. And if you don't have them right now, start seeking them. Read books from successful people. Watch videos of people who are doing what you want to do. Join groups of people who are learning, growing, and building. Even if you don't know them personally yet, you can still choose to surround yourself with their voices and their wisdom. That's how you escape the pull of negativity. So don't make the mistake of thinking you can become rich while keeping a circle of people who have already chosen to stay broke. You can't. You'll either lift them up or they'll pull you down. And more often than not, it's the second one that happens. Protect your environment. Protect your mind. Build your circle wise. Because if you want to be rich, if you want to be free, if you want to achieve success, you must make sure that the people you allow into your life are not the very same people holding you back. Number shoe, not thinking long-term and living only for today, kite. One of the biggest traps that keeps people from building wealth is living only for today. They focus entirely on what feels good right now, what satisfies immediate desires, and what brings instant pleasure. They spend their money as soon as it arrives. They make decisions based on convenience instead of strategy, and they never pause to ask how their choices will affect their future. The result is simple. No matter how much they earn, no matter how hard they work, they remain stuck. Wealth is never created by living only in the present. It is built by thinking ahead, by planning for tomorrow, and by making choices today that your future self will thank you for. People who live only for today often fall into the trap of instant gratification. They want it now, and they believe they deserve it now. A new phone, a night out, a fancy meal. If it feels good in the moment, it gets done. And they never stop to consider how these decisions impact their ability to grow, invest, or save. Those small decisions add up. Each choice to spend instead of save, to indulge instead of invest, compounds over time, creating a future that looks very different from the one they hoped for. Wealth is the product of delayed gratification. It requires patience, discipline, and the ability to prioritize long-term benefits over short-term pleasure. People who plan, save, invest, and work toward their future steadily build a life that grows richer every year. Meanwhile, those who live only for today may feel comfortable temporarily, but comfort without planning is fragile. Life can change in an instant, unspent bills, emergencies, layoffs, and if you've only lived for today, you'll find yourself completely unprepared. So, living only in the moment also limits your opportunities. When you think long-term, you make decisions differently. You invest in skills and relationships, in knowledge and businesses, and in assets that compound over time. Every choice becomes a building block for the future. You're not just looking at what pays today, you're looking at what grows tomorrow. You're thinking in terms of months, years, and decades, not hours. This mindset shift is critical. It's what separates those who remain average from those who achieve extraordinary success. Many people avoid long-term thinking because it feels uncertain. They don't like delaying gratification, and they don't trust that the future will reward their patience. But the truth is, the future is shaped by what you do today. Each small decision, each disciplined action compounds into a life of greater freedom, security, and wealth. Long-term thinking is not gambling on luck. It's deliberately placing small, consistent bets on yourself, on your skills, and on your ability to grow. Over time, those bets become the foundation of financial independence. Living only for today also creates stress without progress. You constantly chase immediate satisfaction, yet something always feels missing. You work hard, but you don't move forward. You earn, but you don't grow. Your life feels like a series of temporary highs and inevitable lows. Long-term change is that rhythm. You make sacrifices now because you know they're investments in a future where money, freedom, and opportunity will multiply. You begin to act with purpose instead of reacting to momentary impulses. Now let me leave you with this. Wealth doesn't come to the person who waits for luck. It comes to the one who prepares, who plans, and who works with discipline every single day. Most people will spend their whole life chasing money, never realizing that the real secret was never the chase. It was the habits, the mindset, and the discipline they refused to build. Don't let that be you. You've got everything it takes to change your financial story, but it won't happen by accident. It will happen because you decide right here, right now, that you're not going to settle for average anymore. You're going to live smart, work smart, and think smart. Build these 7 habits, and they will build your wealth. Build these 7 habits, and they will build your freedom. Remember, financial freedom doesn't start with the money in your pocket. It starts with the discipline in your mind. Start today, and one day you'll look back and thank yourself for refusing to wait.